Hello, everyone. Welcome to Midweek Gaming. I'm Nick. Over there on the other side of the comms is, of course, Justin providing gameplay and, of course, his own dash of commentary wherever he feels necessary and probably where is probably not also necessary because
Welcome.
that's him. There he goes. But
There he is.
there he is. But anyways, so this week we thought we would talk about finally the new season of Destiny. We were going to talk about this at some point. We decided to leave it for a few weeks until everyone's kind of gotten used to the season, some things are
As
out.
well as something I suggested was wait for Crota's end to come out, which it has, and people have talked about that, and I've heard a couple things about it. So there's that.
Yeah, most people say it's good. I've also heard that oh my gosh, what is that bloody exotic that was from the Crota's End raid?
Oh, I
The
don't know that one.
Arta rifle. Bloody the Necrochasm, that's it. I always wanted to get that thing in D1. I had actually gotten it to drop. I got it up to I think legendary, and then I stopped because I didn't play any of the D1 raids. So I never did get Necrochasm officially. I just got up to like legendary status. Still a good gun. Still a decent gun. But anyways, maybe I'll get it in D2. So we decided to wait till everyone got that all done and everything before we gave our full opinions of the season. Um, Again, we'll give our overall thoughts, not just on the story, but on the gameplay angle. I thought we might as well do that as well. Full overview. So yeah, let's just dive right into it. So, first impressions. Honestly, a really good season at first. Now, don't click off yet.
Not yet,
What I'm
not
gonna
yet.
say,
Let me finish.
what
Let
I'm
me
gonna
finish. No, 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 no. Wait.
honestly, don't click the dislike button yet. But don't get me wrong, I love the motif of the season. The idea of the hive thing, really great. The idea of kind of like becoming hive is really an interesting concept when played on paper. Narratively speaking, I love the season. For the most part, there is one major issue that I have, and again, we'll get to that. But overall, thematically, I really like this season. It is got this weird hive aesthetic thing. Eris becoming a hive god of vengeance is an interesting concept. Again, there are some things that come out of it that rub me the wrong way, and I know this is going to be controversial in the lore community, but let it be said that I am one to give my opinion on something, whether people
Want it or
appreciate it or
not.
not, want it or not, well, at least within reason, as so long as not appropriate or anything. This is just my 2 cents on the lore, so I think it's fine if I give my unfiltered
and
opinion on this
and
one.
I'm pretty sure I know which one he's talking about, and I'm going to say it does sound fair if you really do think about it.
We have talked about this a bit ourselves outside of the stream, and he's heard me ranting about it before, so he
Yes.
probably knows where this is
Chances
going.
chances are I know what this one is.
Yeah. But overall, thematically, I really like the season. Bungie's, again, really outdone themselves, again, with the theming. It's really interesting, especially Amaru's claim at the beginning, welcome to the Hive, because, we can finally practice sword logic officially, which is fun, because I get to murder things and be, feel good about it. More than,
Maybe.
because people don't generally do that in Destiny. Not at all. But anyways, gameplay-wise, let's, again, before we get too deep into the lore, because, again, there's a whole discussion and a half, let's just go over the gameplay first. I'm going to have Justin also throw me some opinions here, because I think when it comes to lore, I could be the one doing most of the talk on that one, but it would be unfair if I didn't give him something to do as well. And, well,
Didn't have me something to
would
do
all...
besides gameplay.
And since he's the one provided the gameplay, perhaps it's best he also give his opinion on this as well. So yeah, gameplay wise, let's go on. Start off with you, Justin. What do you think so far?
I do like the idea of the cards for the activities. I haven't messed around with them much, but I do like that you kind of have the ability to kind of optimize your loadout for combat, whatever way you would like, however that may be. Um, from some of the things that I've heard about it, it sounds like some things are like crazy overpowered and strong, so there is that for people to enjoy. Um, but besides that, like base gameplay, nothing too crazy has changed. There's no new like abilities or well, no, there's new abilities for Strand. What was it? One of them is the Beyblade ball for hunters right now.
Yeah, I've seen
Another
that. That is
is
kind of
the
broken.
another. Well, no, the most broken one is for Titan.
Yeah,
There's
no.
one for Titan where you get a sword kill, a punch, or any general kill, and you can go and activate an ability that is extremely similar to that of Overwatch and one character who I can't remember their name right now, that goes and provides a buff to the entire team with damage and healing. Every single pulse, which again, it is very OP, and everyone's literally saying like, yeah, no, I'd be surprised if this doesn't go and get like, fuck,
Nerfed into the
nerfed
ground.
in some way by the end of this season.
Because,
So,
it's not at all robbing us warlocks of our job. No, no, no,
well,
no,
not
no.
well, yeah, there's that, but note that for warlocks, you guys have what was it? It was something that provided you a boost to creating even
Yes.
more little zergling little boys.
Yeah,
So
this is probably where I should chime in here, because I have
there's that.
actually messed around with
He's
it.
messed around with it. I haven't even messed around with the Beyblade ball because I'm too busy, throwing my ball and strand locking myself to it. So.
Yeah, my dude, it's kind of nuts when you actually see how the
Well,
Beyblade
no,
ball
it's
functions. I've seen it in action.
I've seen it in action, and it is good. But the only reason why it's good right now is because of the seasonal artifact going and creating more balls. Like you can actually you spawn more frequently, regardless if you have the strand debuff that prevents you from spawning them at the moment. So
Really? I don't remember that one. I'll have to
yes,
look.
it is. I think it's like its own separate thing. If you have like a something in the thing unlocked that allows you to spawn one. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but something is allowing you to do it, and regardless of what kind of situation you're in. So
Well, I'll chime in here then and kind of talk about the aspect one for Warlock you mentioned. I've messed around with it a bit. Took me a bit to get it working, because at least I found it a bit confusing it for the first bit. And it's actually kind of interesting. I don't know how many uses it'll have. I've yet to test it in too many practices, but it's kind of fun to mess with. So basically the shtick is this. It basically grants you the ability to dodge. Again, while you do it airborne, it consumes your melee energy.
oh right, I remember it now.
And allows you to enter this kind of, I guess, invisible state. I say invisible because I messed around with it. Enemy AI for like PvE targets don't actually target you, funny enough, while you're in this state. So you kind of become this translucent being. And while you do this, granted, I'm sure you show up for PvP, so don't think you're going to use this to pull a Night Stalker in PvP. At least I don't think you can. Though while you are in this kind of weave state, they call it, you gain damage resistance from combatants and players. You also, when you reactivate in the air, you basically come out of it by either reactivating your dodge or casting your rift. So what's the point of doing this other than a bit of damage resistance and maybe making it a little harder to hit? Well, there is a nice little bonus that comes with this. While you are in this weave state, while your melee energy is drained, so again, we warlocks have 3 charges, so use 1 for that and then the other 2 for basically endurance. But while you're there, you're in this state, you generate perched threadlings over your shoulders. So you're kind of following me around. If you're kind of following the train here of thought, you can basically get this, basically make a bunch of threadlings around you, and then exit the weave using Rift. And if you have another aspect equipped, which basically is called Weaver's Call, which allows you to cast a Rift and 3 threadlings spawn outside of that, guess what? They stack. So, if you're following the logic here again, you can basically make a bunch of threadlings, uncloak, and then just have a threadling army go at something or someone. And yeah. Plus, like I said, there's a damage resistance, but I've not really tested it too much because I haven't messed around in PvP, and as I mentioned before, in PvE, the enemies don't even notice you when you're in this state, so, So who knows how good that is. But overall, it's kind of interesting. Like I said, there's aspects to it for PvE and PvP. Allows you to make a bunch of threadlings on demand, more than, you already can as a warlock. And if you're in PvP, again, the damage resistance is probably mostly for PvP because, well, in PvE, like I said, I don't believe enemies even notice you when in this state. So the damage resistance kind of doesn't really do much for you. Because, nothing's shooting at you anyway.
Yeah.
So
I do
that's
know,
kind of the new...
actually, what was it? I can't remember. Did you talk about the fact that, like, the damage resistance is stupid OP for, like, PvP?
Is it?
Yes.
I have not...
You
I
can
said
go
I
and
haven't
tank.
tested.
I can't remember what it was, but some guy went and tested it, and you can tank, what was it? 3 sniper rifle shots to the head.
So clearly the damage resistance is great. So like I said, good for PvE and PvP. Good for making a metric ton of threadlings on demand, if you know, at the
Yeah.
cost of your melee. And for PvP, if you
Chances
want to
are
go out
anyone
and
who's
surviving.
played PvP within the past 2 weeks likely knows full well the capabilities of
This new
the new
aspect.
aspect.
Like I said, I
Very
haven't
well.
tested in PvP, but apparently it's broken. The
Yeah,
damage
from
resistance at
from
least.
what
So
I've seen, people were able to like completely tank ridiculous
that,
amounts. You can still be killed by supers. Some
yeah, well,
supers
what
are like
can't?
instantly one shot, and then there
Well,
are
what can't?
some weapons that can one shot you as well. But for the most part, it is literally just you are invincible. Damage
No,
does not matter.
let me take back what I just said. I wouldn't say this is broken. Because when I say broken, Bungie starts saying, we'll nerf it.
It's only really broken in PvP, and that's it.
Not even, I would say. Because here's the thing, right? Yes, as an aspect, it's very useful. Definitely. But here's the thing. Like I said, it comes with a massive downside, depending on how you look at it. You need to dodge while airborne to activate this ability, and just doing it consumes melee energy, an entire charge of it, in fact. And while you're in it, it will continuously consume what's left of that energy, and the minute it's gone, you come out of that state. And trust me, it can eat through it quite quickly. So it can be good for saving your hide on a few occasions, but you kind of need to set it up a bit for it to work. Like, I don't think you're going to be using this to suddenly avoid sniper shots at the last minute. You're probably going to still fall to those if you're thinking about using this as a kind of a safety net. It
Mm,
might work to a bit of extent, but like I said, you might need a bit of a setup for it.
right.
So, give and take. I
See
wouldn't
where
say
it
it's
goes.
broken, but very useful. I personally don't use it because, like I said, in PvE, it's nah.
It's
PvP,
okay.
it sounds like it's much more useful.
I would say it's more useful in PvP, and I would say don't underestimate it because I've seen some interesting things people do stuff with it, and it's probably going to be very, very annoying in trials. So
Oh yeah.
there's that.
Well, again, like I said, there is some use to it in PvP as well, or PvE as well, because again, it does give you that invisibility from ads. So if you want to use it to kind of like save your ass on a few occasions, if you're, you know, in a bit of a pinch, you might be able to use it if you're willing to sacrifice a few charges to, run off into a corner and basically pull a Night Stalker. I mean, the hunters do it, so why not us, right?
Yeah.
In a way, this is kind
And
of us
keep in
getting a bit of a
mind,
Night Stalker ability,
but
actually.
keep in mind,
Think
you're
about it.
doing a Night Stalker thing while also simultaneously spawning a whole bunch of Threadlings.
True, but you
And
have to
if
come
you're,
out of that ability to use it.
yeah, but well, yeah, but you can also spawn like a metric ton of threadlings while it's also spawning a well, which if you are in a pinch and a teammate comes over and helps you out, you can go and completely either finish off or decimate and or weaken the enemy team very heavily, or you can
True.
just go and completely change the tide very easily.
Well, you're thinking PvE only, PvP only. I'm
PvP.
thinking PvE here as well.
PvE, I don't really see a
That's where
crazy
I was the
amount of
most annoyed.
application of it. I mean, it does allow people who do the whole threadling thing have a little more threadlings from it because it consumes a melee charge instead of a grenade charge, which people who go into the threadling build, you need the grenade charge, so
Yeah. Well,
there's
like I
that.
said, I was before harkening to mostly the PvE scene. If you're in a pinch, like I said, the
It does
weave
help.
status does make you invisibility does make you invisible from enemy AI. So, like I said, you can kind of pull a bit of a Night Stalker. I only say that, like I said, it's outside of that, not really useful as much as a Night Stalker invisibility in PvP because, well, at least from the perspective of the player, you still look pretty freaking visible when you're in that state. So don't think you're gonna start tricking people like, oh, I'm invisible, you can't see me. They can definitely see
They can
you.
see you. It's
The
kind of
AI
the
can.
same as the Night Stalker. Only difference is the Night Stalker can be a little harder to spot if you're
Yeah, a
further
bit harder.
away. That one, you can spot it fairly easily in most
Mm.
maps.
Hmm.
Like Night Stalker, all you need is a little bit of shadow and be far enough away, and it can be very difficult to spot you.
Yeah. Honestly, like I said, I think this might be useful in raids because, like I said, it'll give you a chance to kind of have a respite from AI ads.
Yeah,
Plus, like
it
you
goes
pointed
and
out, you
it
can make
goes and
rifts.
makes it so that now instead of just a hunter being the only one who can go invisible and save that one teammate who's struggling, now
Mm,
the warlock can also do the same, or get a out of jail free card just like the hunter.
pretty much, yeah. And like I said, if you attack on Weaver's Call on top of that, you can also make a metric ton of threadlings when you come out too, so you can kind of clear the area at the same time. So you
Yeah.
know what? I can see this being useful for a Strand Warlock build for raids. So we won't just be useful for like the wells anymore.
Well,
But anyways,
I would be willing to
well,
bet
don't get
people
me wrong.
still want you for wells because you're the
Oh, they
only
always
you're
will.
the only ones who can provide both a health and damage buff while simultaneously also killing the enemy.
Until possibly next expansion when they make the new light
I'ma
subclass. Well, not
just say
subclass.
it for what it
Elite.
is. They should have just gave the Titans a small buff to their bubble. That way, people would use
They
bubble
already
more
did.
often. Not
They
by
already bloody did.
for what? What
They
did they?
already did a while back. I think
Yeah,
they
but
gave the bubble extra defense and a few other
oh,
things. I think.
yeah, but that's its own defense. The bubble used to go and provide you a better damage buff.
Oh, it still does.
No, not by much.
Not by much, but I think they tried
It's
to
like
balance it
a
out because it
very
used to be
minute,
broken.
yeah, a very minute amount.
Actually, I'll have to look at the numbers again. But
Yeah,
anyways,
I'm pretty sure
back to the
last I
season.
checked they balanced the two out.
Yeah, which is kind of a pain because Wells, you know, everyone will just use a bubble because then it'll give you defense as well. Kind of makes the Wells a bit obsolete, but whatever. Then again, well, can you shoot out of a bubble? I think you can
No.
if you have Saint's helmet on.
Yeah, I think out of a Saint's helmet, and that's it.
Yeah, out of Saint's helmet, but other than that, you can't. So, you have to kind of build for it, but it does kind of make Wells obsolete in certain instances. But anyways, back to the season at large. Otherwise, we'll just we'll start sitting here commenting on the state of Warlocks in every other class, but anyways.
Yep.
Not at all salty as the Warlock main.
But
But,
moving back over real quick to major
the
gameplay
season.
stuff.
Yeah.
I'm right now doing Savathun Spire. The other one, I can't remember the name of right now. That one, there is one little thing that I don't entirely like about it. That being a little bit how it's organized when it comes to the free play jump in aspect of it. It works and it does allow it so that you can just literally stay in that lobby for as long as you want and as long as you need, but it also kind of makes it so that people who don't exactly know what you're doing, and or if you're already with like another guy who's been like working pretty well with you, um, they can go and change up exactly what you're doing pretty easily and make it things a little more difficult for the two of you. So, but that just kind of comes down to basic player knowledge. I'm be willing to bet as the season goes along, people will be able to figure out how to do things a little more easily. But as of right now, it kind of does suck. But that's just like free hot join in general. So
You mean the fact that people will just suddenly start doing threes randomly when they don't know what the heck they're doing?
yeah, that too. But people sometimes I've seen people doing twos and struggle as well. So
Hmm.
although
Well,
I can do a two on my own, it'd take me a hot minute, but I know I can do a two on my own. I've done a few on my own because that's the nice thing is the fact that a good number of people will actually leave the activity right away, thinking that you can't stay in
it's
it.
just ended.
Yeah, it's ended and that's it. But no, it actually does like continue for a lot longer than you think.
I think there's also the fact that people are kind of. I don't think it's the fact in a way that there's no knowledge. Because the one he's referencing, right, is the Altars of Summoning, which has
Yeah.
this continuous effect where once you're done one phase of it, instead of the activity ending and you're sent back to orbit as usual, it'll just kind of reset. You can do it all over again. It's just basically this endless mission, to borrow a term from Warframe. The problem is that every mission in Destiny, basically up until this point, I don't think there's ever been an endless mission before, just cuts off at the end. So again, as Justin said, there's a bit of that player knowledge there, but I also think it also comes down to the fact that people are just used to ending at the first kind of section. Or
True.
if people, again, going back to what you said, maybe they'll get someone who's not exactly that aware or good at what they're doing. In most
Yeah.
cases, the Destiny community will kind of stick around
I've
till the
I
end unless they
have
really
actually
hit
had a
you.
few people who have left pretty much after like the first go, because typically you do at least two. Even if you do the third, you're still around for like one more go. But I've had people only stay for like one and then leave, thinking that that was it. But no, there's a lot more to it, and I would strongly recommend you stay for the whole thing because you can get a good sizable amount of loot.
Oh yeah, but also like I said, there might be that fact where generally in the Destiny community, people might stay with you if you're not the best player till the first wave is done, or the first,
Yeah.
shall we say, the mission is done. But after the reset happens, if you're not a great player, people will probably leave, or maybe they'll just leave because, you know, it's a one and done thing for them. Again, endless missions are an interesting idea in theory, but with Destiny being the game that it is and the player base being what it is, I don't know if everyone would be willing to do that. That's the thing, right? But who knows? All the same, though, gameplay-wise, though, again, going back to what you said about the cards, I actually have a full deck of cards. Basically, what Justin was referencing before is this new mechanic called the Deck of Whispers. Basically, this fun little shtick they give you where throughout the game, through various reasons, either through finding cards just randomly in the missions, or through being awarded them, or just simply having them drop at the end of rituals, you can kind of build what they call the Deck of Whispers. Now, this deck is divided into two sections: Minor Arcana and Major Arcana. The Minor Arcana are not really worth mentioning. In some cases, they'll just give you an extra random key for the season, a one-off, or an extra engram. Again, one-offs, right? Or they can be things like, in this case, use a witch's key to open witch's chests in the Altars of Summoning, aforementioned activity, and they may now have a chance of dropping red war weapons. You know, extra buffs to the thing. So they're either interesting, kind of, you know, extra abilities or one-offs. I believe Bife and a few other people in the community have been kind of referring to this as Destiny's new way of kind of doing the seasonal activity when it comes to how you get your boosts. Before, with the
Yeah.
seasons, you had to go to your table, upgrade the table with aforementioned ability thing, and you got more abilities. In this
Yeah,
case, they're using the Deck of
at
Whispers.
one point it was you used Glimmer, then you used a special like unlock that you got, like a special
From
item
doing
that you,
seasonal stuff.
yeah. And then eventually now it, well no, they actually started it I think one or two seasons ago. They started doing like some of it based off of like certain buffs that you wanted or something. I can't remember what it was, but like there were certain little buffs that you could provide to yourself and that was it.
Yeah, they kind of tried to do it as kind of a part of the sub menus, but they didn't really integrate it with the seasons. It was just kind of there. Now
Yeah.
they're using the Deck of Whispers to bring it back into the season as a thing, and it's, you know, it's much more integrated with the season, and it's a good thing, honestly. I like how they're playing it. But there's also the Major Arcana. Now, these are going to be what you aim for, because here's the thing. Not only do unlocking the Major Arcana provide you lore pages, which, as a lore nut for me, I'm just salivating over the chance to get a hold of, but they also provide you with the deck, which you'll be using in both the new seasonal activity, the aforementioned Altars of Summoning, as well as the Spires of Savathun, which Justin was and maybe still is running through now. I don't know, I'm not keeping track of his screen. But what these will do is they will provide you major abilities on the condition that you draw them. Now, granted, you need to have 5 major arcana active or available before this deck takes effect, but once you do, you will start having the possibility of every time you go into these missions or a segment of these missions to draw a card from that deck at random. Now, this ability will give you whatever that card says, and some of them can be pretty bloody broken. Let's just go over to the one everyone particularly likes this season, and that is called Blades. Now, why is Blades the one everyone loves this season? Well, because its ability is, well, let's just say quite fun when you get it to proc, and let's just say you'll be getting it to proc quite often. Specifically, the ability is called, well, just Blades, and it's literally the ability to have heavy ammo drop from combatants that you, if you're defeating them rapidly. To be more specific, rapidly defeating combatants has a chance to drop heavy ammo, and the chance is quite good, actually. I have messed around with it myself, and as I and everyone else in the community will tell you, when you draw this card, you will have heavy ammo if you have a lot of kills getting racked up constantly. Just drop from everywhere. And you might think, that's kind of broken. And maybe. But here's the thing. There is a tier system in the Altars of Summoning, where this will probably be the most useful. And the whole point of the season is kind of, again, branching into the lore section, we'll get into momentarily. Basically, the whole thing is that, spoiler, we have to bring back Savathun as revealed in last season. But instead of being straight up brought back by Imaru, turns out Savathun in her ever conniving ways planned for this alternative, and is willing to help us on one condition. If we deal with her sister, Zivor Roth, first. How do we do that? Well, Savathun being Savathun also provides a solution to this conundrum. The only way to beat Zivor Roth is not through war, but basically Hive God via Hive God. No way you're gonna just simply sit there and fight her like Crota Oryx, because, well, fighting her only makes her stronger. The only way to beat a god is to use just another god. Fight fire with fire. How do we do this? Why, just use the ritual which Savathun has just so kindly provided us to turn Eris into a new Hive God. Because, that's not at all risky and problematic in the slightest.
And in no way did the Exo Stranger start freaking out saying that this is the very thing that she feared.
Yeah, that's not at all happened. No. Everything's just hunky-dory.
Yeah.
And of course we just said, okay, and just played along with it. So, going back to what happens, basically what we need to do is, well, commit the sword logic. How do you make a Hive God stronger? Well, as a fledgling Hive God, she's not exactly strong enough to fight Zivor Roth. So, again, how do you make a Hive God stronger? Why, you start tithing through them through the sword logic. And again, this is where the seasonal activities comes into play. You have Spire of Savathun, and you have the Altars of Summoning. The Spires help open up the path to the summoning, where the real kind of meat of the season is. Basically, over the course of the season, through rituals, or the Spire, or whatever, you will gain offerings. These offerings come in tiers. You got, at the moment anyway, and I say at the moment, and I'll cover why in a minute. This is just a theory of mine at the moment, but we'll get to that. You have feeble offerings, tier 1, powerful robust offerings, tier 2, and powerful offerings, tier 3. Now, depending on which of the offerings you give at the altar, will depend on what the encounter difficulty is like. In the Altars of Summoning, there has the level ability turned off, kinda like in Crucible. The reason is, again, to basically make this tier system work. It wouldn't really make a tier system be a tier system if everyone was so strong that tier 3 still felt like tier 1, because everyone was just broken, overpowered.
Yeah.
So, again, going back to the system, you basically offer up these offerings, and it'll trigger a encounter, which is a varied thing. Sometimes you kill a Vex boss, sometimes it's this, sometimes it's that. There's a hint in the descriptions that Taken might come in at some point. We'll see. But anyways, you give these offerings, you feed Eris up her tithes, and hunky-dory, all is fine.
That's about it.
Anyways, yeah. Each one of these encounters, you'll have the chance to draw a card, again, if you have 5 major arcana. Again, they'll be drawn at random. A lot of people say that there's more than 5 arcana. I think there's like 10, I think, maybe? We don't have a solid number, I don't think, yet. But anyways, you're going to want to keep the deck stuck down to 5, despite all of them still being in the deck, because you can actually go to the Sanctum, this kind of area for the season, and take cards out of basically the draw list. You're going to want to do this to effectively make sure that the ones you want are the ones that proc most often. And like I said, some of them can be pretty broken. The Blades, like I said, is just one example. Another one is quite literally a card that, if drawn, makes your weapon stronger the more kills you get. And I don't think there's a cap to that. So, you know, go nuts. And you're going to want to need...
Beehive.
Yeah,
Beehive.
beehive. Beehive, go kill things. And you're going to want to need these things because while tier 1 offerings are pretty easy, tier 2 are a bit difficult, and tier 3, well, as me and Justin has been alluding to, unless you've got a deck that is good, unless you've got partners that are good, don't even try it. Because, oh dear. I believe I've even heard some of the big names in the Destiny community even had trouble dealing with tier 3 a bit themselves. So,
There's that.
there's that. You're going to want a good deck of cards, and you're going to want to have all 5 of them. I personally found tier 3 to be almost impossible till I got the deck working, because, like I said, they do actually even the odds quite a bit. But if you don't have them, it's going to be a bit of a slog. So, But yeah, that's basically the new season. You basically have these 2 missions, and every week it's basically a question of offering more things to, of course, to Eris. Much like how in last season, despite there being Salvage and Deep Dive was the one people focused on, the story focused on more, because that was what kind of drove the plot. Same thing with this season. There is the Spire, and then there is the offering in the, of course, Altars of Summoning. That's the one that people are focusing on, because that's where the story is, or at least... Now, let me rephrase that. That is where the story is focusing on, so that's the one you'll be doing for the, coming weeks of the season. And fun fact, Xevo Wrath does kind of actually get involved at some point in the season and start providing her ever so colorful dialogue. But, whatever. All that said, let's go over to my favorite part of this my favorite part of a discussion about Destiny, the lore section. Justin can give his opinion here wherever he wants to, but I don't know how much he'd be able to do so here, if I might just say.
Yes. Also, can I just say our one teammate fucking AFK sucky.
Come, play nice.
No, I will not. I deal with enough of that in Team Fortress 2 every day. I do not need more AFK. If you wish to AFK, then do not play the game. There is this thing called the stay in the menu.
Ladies and gentlemen, Justin.
Am I wrong?
I'm not gonna participate in that conversation, man.
I mean, this isn't a single player game. This is worse than Team Fortress 2. This is a live service multiplayer live game. Like, there is no pausing for this game.
There's no pausing for TF2 either, though.
There isn't, but it's worse for this game because you're impacting other people in, like, a worser way than you would in Team Fortress 2. There's actual consequences in this game. That being, your game doesn't end. You're stuck here until you complete the game. Unlike in Team Fortress 2, where it's just, yes, my lobby ended.
Anyways, on to lore, otherwise we'll be here all night.
Yes.
But, so, the lore of the season. Again, I've kind of touched on it before, well, for a good extent. I've given the overview. But let me give my opinions on it so far. Again, Eris is becoming a hive god to fulfill Savathun's bargain, because Savathun refuses to drag her butt out of the grave until we deal with her sister. Because, in the words of Bife, everything to do with the hive is family politics. But, whatever, right?
What can you do?
All in all, though, like I said, it's an interesting season. I myself find the concept interesting, the kind of idea of us becoming Eris's kind of, acolyte, effectively, and tithing to her, and effectively becoming part of the hive, and becoming our own hive brood, which she is kind of running. That doesn't feel too bad. It's, all in all, the problem with the story is the tone. Weird? Let me explain. Eris is touted here as being the only person who can stop Xevo Wrath, and while that's not necessarily wrong, we've seen her fight other powerful guardians in the past. Didn't really end well. Osiris. The problem here is how she's kind of portrayed, I should say. And this kind of goes against what Xevo Wrath literally said last season. So, for those who don't know, there's a seasonal exotic that we got last season, and that is, what is it called again? It was only last season. How have I forgotten it already? My goodness. Wicked Implement. I struggled so much to get the darn thing. Wicked Implement. Basically, you go through the underwater chambers and you end up in a temple to Xivu Arath, and you have to commit the sword logic to get the weapon, effectively proving yourself a worthy opponent. The logic being that, maybe just she says this to everyone, I don't know, that we're kind of portrayed as being the one Xivu is hoping to face, and being the one that she's hoping to test herself against. This makes sense when you consider our history, right? Canonically, the Guardian, the main character, has knocked off Oryx, has knocked off Crota, has knocked off Savathun, basically the entire Hive pantheon at this point, plus Zol. So, we're kind of a big deal in the Hive pantheon. It would make sense that the very god of war of the Hive pantheon would like to test her blade against us, because nothing else has managed to win so far, and fighting is kind of her whole thing. But then we get to this season, and Xivu basically says that nope, we're actually not the one she's hoping to deal with. Eris is, and funny enough, not only is that portrayed as the current state of things, it's also portrayed that apparently Eris is both portrayed kind of in game and kind of in her own mind as the one who took down Oryx, as the one who took down Crota, and somehow is also giving herself credit for Savathun. I don't know how that works, but anyways. My point here is that it kind of doesn't make sense. The story right now, and Destiny's motif has always been, become legend. Yet it's always, at least in this kind of case with the Hive, feeling like we're kind of becoming more a footnote in Eris.
We're just here.
Yeah, we're just here.
And I mean, to be fair, it's kind of been like that for like the past maybe two seasons. Like, we've just been like another, like not a pawn, but like another guy who's been just helping everyone else.
Yeah.
Like take a good couple seasons ago, like during Season of the Wrath. In a way, it could be argued that Crow was like the main guy in it all.
Season of the Hunt, you mean?
Or yeah, Season of the Hunt. But when you really think about it, in that season, Crow, although being kind of acting like the main character type guy, we were the ones doing all of the work, and we were kind of like recognized as the big hero, especially after Crow literally like he goes and tries to take on the Xivu's champion on her own, or on his own, and then gets beat. So he's like, Guardian, I can't keep going. I've barely gotten out of there on my own. Like, go on without me. Like.
And then we promptly kick his ass. But
yeah, like, you don't really get that kind of feeling for the past few seasons. For the past few seasons, it's literally just been like, yes, we are here, we are helping everyone out, and that's about it.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing, right? And again, I mention Eris here specifically because it's a perfect example, right? The idea that Eris, the whole plot of this story kind of hinges that, we even have a bit of dialogue from Xivu at the end of one of the story weeks where she literally is raving to Savathun how Eris is the big thing that will end them, and Eris is the big thing that will do this. And, there's really no way I can say this without sounding pretentious here, but it really doesn't make sense when you think about it, right? Eris is portrayed as wielding her, like, the enemies of the Hive as a knife. She wields us like a knife. Yeah, sure. Yeah, with Crota, she was a major help in defeating him. With Oryx, she was a decent help there too. Sure, she was kind of involved. But I don't get Savathun. How the heck did you help with Savathun? The basic march she said was the mind should bend here, which kind of was already the thought process the Guardian was on anyway, so sure, you kind of said, okay, sure, that's kind of how you should do it, but when it comes to the actual defeat of Savathun, we kind of did everything. So I don't get how you're sitting there going, I am the ultimate evil of the Hive. No, you're the one who got your ass slapped the minute you tried to go after Crota, and then we promptly went around knocking off Hive gods one by one. So, I don't know. Funny enough, this is even kind of reflected by Bungie themselves. I don't know why this almost kind of reflects the state of things, because I think in Shadowkeep, and some lore scholars such as Mylan, I think I brought this up recently with some conversation with Xivu, saying how it kind of fulfills the prophecy. If you only ask me, it kind of only solidifies the issue here. Well, we have two hive, or I think a group of hive, in the Hellmouth bickering. Why are they bickering? Well, basically what's going on is this is after Oryx has been beaten and kind of between Destiny 2, kind of pre-Shadowkeep, a bit before it. Now, these hive are bickering because they're kind of debating the state of the affairs of the hive. The big thing that's always been kind of overarching the hive for a while now has been who should take over Oryx's mantle. Oryx being the big boss of the hive pantheon, effectively the hive version of Zeus. Who's gonna rule the pantheon? Who's gonna rule the hive broods? Well, here's the thing. Oryx, specifically in his will, which he kind of wrote down in the Books of Sorrow, basically states that whomever kills me inherits everything, including my job and my title. Everything. Basically, he wanted whoever should off him take over for him as the new Taken King. Okay? We didn't. That's kind of always been a fun point of contention in the lore, and why Tolan calls us squanderers, because we left the throne empty and didn't fill it kind of as he wanted. So, that's where the hive are left, without a leader and without a position. So they're bickering over who should take over Oryx's throne. One of them mentions the Guardians, us. We killed Oryx, therefore we should have the throne. And then another one goes, no. Eris did it because she, schemed against the Taken King, and she is the one who has him in her thoughts, and da-da-da-da-da. Basically, it kind of goes back and forth as to who should rule. If you look at the most orthodox look, it should be us. But if you kind of think about it a bit, you could argue it could be Eris. So it's that back and forth kind of dialogue here. And I mention this because in the recent season, it's kind of been alluded to that Oryx's mantle will be taken up by Eris. Again, it feels almost like we're becoming a back note here. Back in D1 and throughout all of Destiny, it has always become legend. And in D1, it really felt like that. We became the new generation of Iron Lords. We defeated the Black Garden. We killed Crota. We killed Oryx. We did everything. Everyone helped, but at the end of the day, we're the ones who kind of, actually did it. And in recent months, and basically recent, as you kind of mentioned, Justin, seasons in D2, it almost feels like we're being slowly pulled out of the picture. And I almost think that it's a kind of consequence of Bungie's storytelling. Let me explain. Bungie has canonically stated in the game that there are multiple Guardians, that there are dozens of Guardians, and that there are multiple Guardians in the world and in the tower and stuff like that. Why is that an issue? Well, every Guardian is their own story kind of working in. I have been around since Destiny 1 Vanilla, so technically I have been around for Oryx's death, I have been around for Crota's death, and there is legacy content in the game which kind of references that. But, again, people like Justin have not.
Yeah.
And so you run into this issue that comes with both having the game restarted, but also this fact that there are other people in the world. If there was just one main character, you could just say, well, they did it because da-da-da-da story reasons. Warframe kind of does this in a way, and they do this, and it's kind of resulted in their own issues. I mean, I'll bring them in here for a second as kind of a comparison. What Warframe does is, despite there being multiple characters, multiple Tenno, the kind of main characters of the game, you're the only Tenno that matters. So, despite there being dozens of other Tenno which can do things, for example in the new War Quest, which came in the game, this big bad defeats you, and because you're gone, no one can save the universe. It's kind of the Legend of Zelda problem. Once Link falls, well, that's it, we're done.
It's over.
There's dozens of other Tenno, though. What happened to them? Did they just say, okay, whatever, and just peace off to the edge of the galaxy until we solve the issue? It's because of that issue where you kind of have to forget that other characters exist and other players exist in the game. But Destiny does not. Bungie does not. They have to take into account that there are other players, there are other characters. And this kind of facelessness character self-insert thing, when there are multiple players at play, if this makes sense, kind of makes it difficult to make stories about those characters specifically. you always kind of need someone to fill in the role, so to speak. Which is why, all the way circling back to this season with Eris, it's kind of difficult to make us a Hive God, for example, or make us the big issue with Zevor Roth, because, again, there's that issue with continuity to deal with there. There's multiple people, so it's a bit difficult to have one single Guardian focused out. Destiny has kind of done this in some cases, where they'll single out the Guardian specifically, but sometimes they don't. It's kind of a back and forth here, and in this case they chose not to. And it kind of devalues the kind of efforts of the player, I would say, in my extent. Because, you know, what's the point in striving to become legend when everyone else is getting the credit? Am I right?
Pretty much.
Which again kind of leads us to my big issue with the story this season. Everyone will say it's great, rosy, and da-da-da-da, and it's going interesting places. I couldn't agree more when it comes to most of that. It is a interesting concept. I am interested to see what happens when, you know, this happens. When, you know, all of this plays out fully. There are some interesting plot threads here. But, in a way, it also kind of rewrites some of the accomplishments of the player, again, to kind of fix that issue with continuity. But it kind of makes the whole point of it kind of worthless? You know, like I said, it's kind of interesting sitting here and hearing Eris in her monologue, which everyone's, you know, complimenting about, saying, you know, I wield her killers as a knife. I killed Crota. I killed Oryx. I killed Savathûn. Maybe, and oh hell no. Like, that's all I can kind of say when I sit there and hear it, because, you know... And again, that goes back to kind of the thing last season. We were kind of led to believe that we were the big thing Zevor Roth was hoping to test herself against. Because, you know, it would make sense. We killed Oryx. We killed Crota. We're the, you know, the biggest supposed enemy in the Sol system for the Hive. It would make sense that we're the thing that they would fear. Instead, it's Eris for some reason. Yeah, she's an interesting character, but I personally don't know how much of that fear is warranted. Like, yeah, she's obsessed with the Hive, but in terms of physical strength, which, you know, is kind of the whole Hive's shtick with sword logic, I honestly don't know how dangerous she is. Like, the whole threat of this season that she poses only kind of exists due to the assistance of Savathûn. So, again, where do we fit in? We're just kind of slowly being written out of the story here. My only hope is that in Final Shape, we will be revealed as the final shape, and that's how the kind of become legend thing happens again. It's kind of hard to become legend when everyone else is also legend. Again, going back to the idea when everything's special, nothing is special.
When everyone's super.
Yeah, that's a good way to kind of look at it, right? So, that's kind of my big issue with the season so far. Like I said, it's going interesting places, but I don't know, it just doesn't sit right with me having the kind of accomplishments of the player character slowly get written out of the story as time goes on. And again, it's kind of a factor of how Bungie tells Destiny's story.
Hello?
Which introduces issues.
Hello? Hello? Bungie, you have bug. Bungie.
I'm trying to go over a serious thing here.
Yes, well, I am trying to knife object that I'm supposed to melee, but for some reason, instead of meleeing object that I'm supposed to, because there is an enemy beside object that I'm supposed to melee, okay, I'm just gonna throw a knife at it. There we go, that's how it works. Continue, you are fine. Just Bungie
like to
make
ruin
bug.
the mood, bro.
Bungie make bug.
Anyways, but yeah, that's kind of where I sit on it at the moment. Again, great story, but it just feels weird.
It just goes back to the point that as the past little bit with seasons, we've kind of been, in a way, been slowly relegated to just that support character. And
Yeah.
sure, that is literally what we are doing, but to go back to that, like, season of the hunt, season of the hunt did it pretty well, where it was like, oh yeah, yeah, no, the entire season we're pretty much just assisting Crow, because Crow was the one who knew what to do, knew what was
Yeah, it
going
felt like
on.
Crow's story, but at the end of the day, we had a,
Crow went in on his own, and the boy had bad time, so we went in to go and finish the job for him.
yeah. And again, kind of even going a bit further back, Season of the Dawn had this as well. We were kind of credited with the guy who saved Saint 14, and that's kind of a big thing. That's, a big thing.
Yeah.
But again, it just feels weird that this thing that's always been this great status symbol for the Guardians in the story, the ones who killed the Hive Gods, has now been Eris killed the Hive Gods.
Yeah.
Sure? Sure? Let's say that. She killed the Hive Gods. If you count killing the Hive Gods, getting her ass whooped and, wandering the Hellmouth for a few centuries or so. But anyways, no. When you scratch out a few details, yeah, sure, we can say that. It's, I don't know. Like, going back to the Taken King, right? It always felt like it was the idea that, oh, maybe we'll inherit the mantle of Oryx, and that's how we get Taken powers. Nope, that's not what happens. Again, going back to Warframe, it's not a perfect version either, because again, I use this as a perfect parallel because in a way, story-wise, it is a perfect parallel to this issue, which has its own problems. Like, again, when all you do is acknowledge this one character, when that one character gets defeated and suddenly the whole system is screwed, you kind of think, wait a minute, what happened to all the other, did they just, not, they just pieced out to the edge of the system? Like, every other player just, well, he's dead, we're done. Just
So
pieced out to the edge
long.
of
Bye-bye.
it's that kind of continuity question of what happened to all the other players. And you just kind of have to suspend that disbelief for a bit to kind of make the story go forward. But in doing so, it makes the story feel more personalized because of that, because you're the only one that seems to matter. But in Destiny, it's the opposite of that. And because of that, you run into a bit of a, I guess, disconnect, because everyone else is in the story, and that's a canonical thing that's referenced. So you kind of have this issue of stories that are a bit unpersonalized because, well, it's hard to make a personalized story when there's everyone else's story in it as well, if that makes any sense.
It's everyone else's story, but no one's at the same time.
Yeah, pretty much. So that's why I'm really hoping for Final Shape to be the one thing that's like, we are the Final Shape, haha. Not like some dumb thing for like, the Final Shape is nothing, and
good day,
the Final
sir.
Shape is just us. Yeah, no, we just stopped the witness, and everyone's just like, okay, back to business as usual. Seriously?
That's it. That's all there is.
Again, like I said, the end moral of the story is just, as great as this season is, for me, it's also a little jarring. Because it kind of devalues the entire Hive, basically exterminatus a la Pantheon that we've been doing for the last little bit. I mean, we killed Zol and Necros, and Nokris as well. But because technically they were kind of exiled from the Pantheon, they don't really count, and no one really references them. They are the ones we shall not speak of.
Yes.
And since they're the only ones we've kind of knocked off in Destiny 2 when it comes to Hive Gods, they're the only ones who can continuously get referenced. So,
there is that.
Like I said, it's just weird. What do you think, Justin? I mean, you've given your thoughts kind of already, but...
I think at the end of the day, as of right now, the story is doing, like, very good story stuff. Like, the whole plot of Eris going and becoming a Hive God and going that route and seeing what Savathun has schemed up for this, like, going and preparing for this thing is interesting, but there is the very honest truth of, as of lately, our character hasn't been the main character who has gone around saving people. The young wolf, the Crota Ender, the God Slayer, the like. None of that matters, and
Yeah,
it's just yeah,
it just feels weird.
doesn't feel
Like
right.
again, there's no way to say it without being pretentious. And
Mhm.
don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this story is bad.
No.
Plot-wise, when you take this big issue out, it's actually really interesting, and there are really interesting things that come out of this, and I find them really interesting, and I want to see where this is going. There's that question again that kind of Justin joked about earlier. What does Elsie Bray, who's seen thousands of futures, most of them play out with Eris going raving mad and going against us,
Like, what does it
because
look
of
like?
power, like the power we're giving her now? Will that happen? Will we defeat Zubul Roth? There's all these plot threads that kind of are interesting, and I want to see where they go. But again, you just at times can't escape that jarring fact of like our efforts are kind of being taken credit for by someone who has had a debatable, if non-existent, really effect on things.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I'm gonna credit her with the assistance in Crota and Oryx's death. That is without debate. But sorry, Eris, I don't know how you can claim to be the one with Savathun's death. I
I'm
think you're
sitting
stretching.
right here.
I'm sitting right here. And again, on one final note, it's kind of funny where everyone's like, what'll we do if Eris, turns against us? Meanwhile, we, who have knocked off, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Meanwhile, us, the
5
canonical
gods?
chosen one who's gone and taken on the darkness, who's gone and controlled the darkness, who's gone and done like anything and everything and just does not care.
Yeah, no, it's like, what'll happen if Eris betrays us? Well, there's another spout on the wall for, Hive gods.
Well, you
I've
see,
got
there's this little thing called the mantle.
There's mantle of responsibility. But,
And I'm not
anyways.
referring to that kind.
Not that kind.
Not the
Not
one
that
that
kind.
you think. It's
But
much
again,
worse than you think.
yeah, like I said, I know it's going to be a controversial hot topic because I haven't heard it in the community before, but
No.
I'm going to put it out there
It,
because I believe
it
it
is an
legitimate
honest point to be made, though. Like, it very well is an honest point to be made. Because the fact that, in a way, you kind of been slowly relegated more and more as the side character.
The side character,
Like,
yeah. The
it's not a, and that's not a, like, oh yeah, no, you're the side character. No, like, you are the side character. You are the guy going and doing the thing.
Yeah. Which, again, if we didn't do much in the story, would make sense, but we're the one always doing the legwork. So it's almost less like a side character, more like a minion. The master gets the credit, yet the minion does the legwork.
Yeah.
But,
Eh.
I don't know.
See where it goes.
Yeah, I can only hope that it kind of gets resolved as the season goes on. Like I said, it just feels weird to have a game that's like become legend. Meanwhile, you are slowly getting written out of
You
the
are
story.
not a legend. You are an existent that which goes and provides me my moral support. Now provide me my moral support, player character.
That's the thing, right? When there's everyone in the story and you gotta have to accommodate for the background dressing of every other character, you kind of are forced to not make stories very personalized, which kind of results in this issue.
Yeah.
And as we discussed with Warframe, the other method
And I mean,
also
there
has
was
its problems.
nothing. There's not a whole lot stopping them from doing what they did when everyone went to go save Saint, and just announce titles that you do have.
Yeah, like in the tower. Well, I mean, like in the tower. Sorry if I cut you off here.
No, like
But
there are some titles like no matter what, everyone should in some way maybe have the Red War tag or the Red War title. I know I have it, despite the fact that I was never there for D2 year one. I do have it. So
that's a thing, right? It's kind of also a product of them restarting the game. All the business with Crota and Oryx happened before, but
yes.
Savathun's less understandable. Yeah. But again,
are
it's
some questionable things that have happened in the days.
yeah, but again, it's that case where you kind of have to accommodate for the fact that there's hundreds of players and they canonically reference that. So, eh.
Yeah.
But again,
Like
as you said
everyone's
with
the active hero and not the active hero at the same time.
yeah, and again, it's kind of like what they did with Saint, which is kind of a clever idea. They were saved by a certain character. They were saved by a certain guardian. In the tab for a Saint, if you look at him in the tower, it says that. It never mentions who specifically, but there are literal dialogue bits where I believe even in Season of the Lost, where Saint literally says, "Ah, my friend, it's been a while," and kind of references the fact that yes, you were the guy who's known him for a very freaking long time, technically speaking. That was a perfect example of what I'd like to see in the story. Kind of that idea of like still referencing you, but not to the point where it feels like your story at that point.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we shouldn't do stories with everyone else. Don't get me wrong. Like
No,
I
no,
said,
no,
it kind of feels pretentious in me saying that, but again, this season just feels really odd having all the big things that we were once credited for now being somehow credited to Eris. Which to some degree I understand, and then, as I said 1,000 times, she credits herself with Savathun, which I very much don't understand.
No, thank you.
Yeah, like, I defeated Savathun. How? You stared at her corpse, and then suddenly she died, but,
Pretty much. I mean, that's kind of what we did. She
Yeah, no,
died.
I mean-
She's already died. We're just making sure she did.
Yeah, we're just making sure she did, but I don't know. Like I said, it's weird. Again, I can see why they didn't go with the route with the player for this one, because if they made the player the Hive God, then canonically now you'd have dozens of Hive Gods running around, which would be problematic. But
Yes. Which kind of goes and takes me to the point where you kind of like we are Eris's like hive. We are her brood in a way.
yeah,
But the question is, hive logic typically goes along the lines of like power goes up, not goes down. But the only way where Eris goes and gains power, and we are able to assist her in defeating Zebu Arath, besides like that actually lets us go and defeat Zebu Arath, because that's kind of the only thing that they're gonna do with it. We're going to go and either fight Zebu Arath, and maybe Eros is going to help us and maybe deal the final blow. But I'd be willing to bet we are the ones who are going to fight Zebu Arath. So the question is, how is that power dynamic type thing going, where we are able to take on Zebu Arath, but simultaneously not the ones who are the Hive Gods? Is her power being passed on to us, or what's going on?
I think, like I said, how it's gonna work is, again, from what I understand from Savathun's plan, to be a god, you need a god, or at least in the case of Zebu Arath, because regular war does not work against her. So basically, you need to empower a Hive God to the point where she can basically pull with Oryx, basically look at her and say, I am the more powerful supreme deity, so I can cancel out your existence.
Yes.
And it's just going to be a fisticuffs fight between two gods, which will be kind of interesting. But even when you look at the title for this season, which again always kind of references your accomplishments in the season, going back to Season of the Dawn, it's again Savior, because you're the guy who saved Saint, and one of the requirements is for you to play the quest which saves Saint. This title is, and again I have trouble pronouncing this one, but it's called Haruspex. I believe that's how it's called. And if you look up the term Haruspex, it's actually kind of interesting, because this one kind of confused me. So I looked it up, and what it actually means is it's a title used in real life, or was, by very old Greek kind of religious figures. And it basically means they're a figure in religion of high authority. Basically the Greeks' kind of version of, if to borrow the term, a pope or someone akin to a high-ranking religious figure. So kind of like a high priest, effectively. So the idea is that we're kind of becoming the Haruspex, or the high priest of Eris's brood of guardians. We're kind of one of the head priests. And again, kind of referencing what you said, Justin, when it comes to sword logic, yeah, it's kind of funny because general sword logic, when you look at how it works, actually works like this. A hive kills, they take as much as they need to feed their worm and grow stronger, and then the excess is tithed up the ladder, again, power flows up here, and pools at the hive gods, who then have an excess amount to feed their excessive worms. And the reason this was developed is, again, because Oryx eventually realized he couldn't kill enough by himself to feed the ever-growing need, so he said, all of you now tithe the excess to me, and that'll offset the issue. But again, that's because he himself had already grown to that point. In the case of what we're doing with Eris, is kind of skipping step A and going straight to step B, or step 1 and going straight to step 2. That makes more sense. Where we're not even taking the power from the killing, we're just tithing it all in bulk to Eris.
Yes.
And that's making her stronger.
And it makes sense on that front because we don't need it.
Yeah, we don't need it. We don't have a worm to feed.
Technically, we already gain strength through killing. Like that
if you
kind
look
of
at
already. Well, no, lore-wise, that's kind of how it works in a way. Like every time you kill, your light strengthens. You strengthen your light by going and like fighting and using it.
I don't know about that, Chief. It's more akin to training. Technically, they kind of address how light is, like how strong Guardians are, and there's a bit of a debate in the lore community, both in-game and out of game, about how much of a Guardian's power is nature and how much is nurture. Like, some people are just born with powerful ass light, and then there are other people who have weak light that train it until the point where they just become way too powerful. I think literally I think it was the collector's edition for Witch Queen, or I think it's one of the collector's editions. Maybe it was Witch Queen or Lightfall, I don't remember. Where, we have a kind of case of Ikora, and they're kind of debating, was Ikora's light always this strong? Because she's credited as being like, I don't remember how the ranking system in game works, but
like
basically one of the strongest Guardians.
Warlocks.
Yeah, one of, if not the strongest Warlock. And there's a kind of debate where it's like, was she always this strong, or was her years spent in the Crucible what trained her to the point where she became broken strong? So, how much is nature and how much is nurture, effectively.
Mm-hmm.
But again, as you say, we don't have a worm, so we just tied the bulk to Eris. And funny enough, it's actually mentioned in the plot armor for this season, actually, in the lore tabs, why Guardians don't have a throne world. Because you kind of need to do Hivey stuff, and may or may not need a worm, excuse me,
you kind of
to
need
do that.
A worm to get a worm.
We kind of need a worm to make a throne world and do sword logic properly. She even says that if it were as easy as just killing a bunch of strong things, every Guardian would have a throne world the size of Paris by now. But, again, we don't. So, throne world off the table for potential in-game housing, I guess. Whatever.
For now.
For now.
Don't outrule it yet.
I mean, everyone wants in-game housing. I know that's a popular request, but we just need to make it work in-game. And apparently they've just discounted the idea of using the throne world idea, which, come on, that would have been an easy justification. Oh well. But, anyways. So yeah, that's where I stand on the lore. Again, controversial hot take, I know, for this season, but
that's kind of how it feels.
Yeah. I know I agree with it. I know Justin also, to an extent, agrees with that point. I don't know. Do you guys agree with that point? Does it feel kind of like we're being...
Does it feel like you've kind of been relegated as the support of all supports, or how do you feel?
How do you feel about that? Like, again, Bife has once said that...
And I mean, if you think we're wrong with it, you very well are allowed to say we are wrong about it. Just be, at the very least, go and tell us why we are wrong about it. Don't just say you're wrong and not say anything.
Don't just be one of those guys who's like, you're wrong.
Some people's idea on that is, yes, you're wrong, but I'm not going to tell you why you're wrong, and instead I'm just going to make you think that you're right and wrong at the same time.
Yeah. Again, be civil. We're not so shallow that we'll be like, how dare you say we're wrong? We're entitled to our own opinions. You're entitled to your own opinion. You think we're wrong? That's entirely within your purview. Just be civil about it.
I mean, you could treat it like me and just think of it as a game, and if I wanted to, I could go play Fallout or Halo or any other game. I'm not really relegated towards just Destiny. I just play
Anyways.
Destiny because I enjoy it, and that's why I hope you play it too.
Come now, man. Don't ever say it's just a game. We know how that turns out.
I mean, it's kind of a job, but it did start out as a game.
You ever say it's just a game, you're gonna have a lot of people in the community that want your head for that. But
Like, I am
anyway.
angry.
Anyways, how far are we in the video, Justin? What time are we at? An hour?
Hour and 10.
All right, we'll cut it down here. We already talked way more than long than we should have, but I think that's a point that should have been kind of expressed in full. But whatever. Anyways, so yeah, that's the video. Like, comment, subscribe. You know how this works. You've come to YouTube. You know how this system works. And yeah, we'll see you all next week. So from me and Justin at the midweek office, we bid you adieu and happy tithing, I guess.
Have a good one.
Yeah.
As I literally tithe my victory. Literally,
Yes.
as we are tithing.
Sacrifice.
Ah, yes. Here, let me add to that sacrifice real quick. Let me throw down my
Just-
knife, my grenade, shoot my Galahorn. There we go.
Just brings out a thrall. It's time for the sacrifice, Lewis.
No, you have a thrall head, the exact same type of thing for the spy head in Team Fortress 2 and Meet the Medic. The thrall just sits there, is alive. Time for tithing, little one.
Time for tithing. Sit around the ritual circle. Una shaka, una shaka.
Hoka shaka, holla, holla, hula shaka, holla, holla. Now holler now.
Anyways, have a good week, everybody. Bye bye now.